She's so sweet, so calm, so fair.
Don't tie can to a doggy's hair.
Fire can break out at any time. This Christmas, don't leave your children alone in the house.
Welcome back to reality.
Incompetence can be frustrating. From a teenage fast food worker getting my order wrong, to investigators contaminating a crime scene and everything in between. Whether it's human error or just blatant stupidity, incompetence is frustrating. But never have I seen a criminal become so frustrated with the law for doing such a botched job of an investigation, especially for a crime that they committed. On the 20th of August, 1975, in Busan, South Korea, a 7-year-old named Kim Hyeon-Jeong stood out for her gentle nature and exemplary behavior. Beyond these qualities, she had a notable fondness for Korean-style corn dogs. It was a common sight for her to approach her parents after dinner, requesting a small sum of money to make her way to a local shop where she could indulge in her beloved corn dogs. On that particular August 20th, her parents once again handed her some money, allowing her the opportunity to satisfy her craving at the nearby store. Little did her parents know that this would be the last time she was ever seen alive. Setting out at 8 p.m. for the store, her departure initially didn't raise concerns with her parents. The sun still hung high, and the store's mere 5-minute walking distance seemed reassuring. As time progressed, however, unease began to take root. Half an hour had passed without any sign of her prompted her parents to worry. Venturing to the corn dog stand, her parents engaged the worker. They were informed that she had indeed visited. The last sighting of her was marked as she retraced her steps in the direction of her familial abode. Inquiries among a handful of witnesses and neighbors yielded a consistent narrative. The outdoors remained quiet, devoid of any vivid memory of her interactions with others or involvement with vehicles. Her path never intersected with the residential block where she lived. Before long, the authorities were summoned to address the escalating situation. As the sun began its descent, signaling the approaching twilight, law enforcement officials arrived on the scene. Accompanied by concerned neighbors, they embarked on a concise inquiry. Despite their efforts, no tangible leads emerged, nor did any evidence suggest a malevolent involvement in Kim's sudden disappearance. Consequently, the police announced their intention to resume their efforts the following day, before departing from the area. 10 hours elapsed before the dawn of August 21st at 5:45 a.m., when a 35-year-old park manager known simply as Moon undertook his routine patrol within the vicinity of Yongdusan Park. Amidst his vigilant rounds, a grim discovery came to light: the lifeless body of a child. Responding swiftly, Moon promptly notified the police. Yet, it would be another 2 hours before a detective or investigator would arrive, the clock striking 8 a.m. The remains, unmistakably identified as those of Kim, lay a substantial distance of 8 kilometers from her home. During the examination of her remains, investigators arrived at an intriguing deduction. The lifeless body, originally presumed to be that of a homeless individual, was positioned face down on the ground, scantily clad in nothing but her undergarments. The initial police assessment leaned towards accidental poisoning, a potential outcome of food or drug ingestion, perhaps unintentionally consuming her parents' medication. At that juncture, no indications pointed towards foul play. This hypothesis, however, encountered challenges as more law enforcement personnel and investigators converged on the scene, prompting a re-evaluation of the situation. Several key factors raised doubt about the original conclusion. Firstly, the distressing detail emerged that the deceased, a mere 7 years old, was discovered in a state of near undress, rendering the circumstances more perplexing. Yet, the most compelling revelation that cast doubt upon the initial analysis was how her own garments had been used to bind and restrain her hands and feet, drawing them tautly behind her back. This convinced the arriving officers that their colleagues' earlier interpretation might have been amiss. Upon the arrival of the newly dispatched officers, a proactive push ensued, urging their fellow law enforcement colleagues to re-examine the circumstances surrounding the child's demise. Flipping her body onto its back, they were confronted with an unsettling sight. A message, inscribed in black ink, adorned her abdomen. The message cryptically declared Lee Jung-suk from Byom-cheon-dong was killed in Daishin Park. Given the intricate nuances of the Korean language, the intended meaning of this message remained elusive to the police. The question lingered whether Lee Jung-suk was a victim, a perpetrator, or perhaps even connected to the girl's parents. In spite of these perplexing revelations, the official case and subsequent police report adhered to a narrative divergent from the unfolding complexities. The report asserted, the girl, potentially without a stable home, succumbed to either food poisoning or a drug overdose. Absence of discernible physical injuries challenges the classification as a homicide. It is notable that this conclusion was documented before the body received proper identification or a coroner conducted a thorough autopsy. The insights and conclusions drawn by the initial officers and investigators on the scene found themselves brushed aside, their perspective overlooked by the subsequent actions of the police and detectives. Shortly after, the identity of the deceased was confirmed as Kim. As her parents came face to face with the unfolding direction of the investigation, their natural response was one of fury. The trajectory of the inquiry toward a potential homicide gained momentum only in response to the persistent demands of Kim's parents. Eventually, a coroner conducted a meticulous examination of Kim's body, leading to a revised understanding of her demise. The cause of death was attributed to suffocation, resulting from pressure applied to the back of her neck and head. Evidently, a substantial bruise adorned the side of her face, indicative of an external force restraining and pinning her down. The severity of her restraints rendered movement of her limbs arduous, if not virtually impossible. Following their removal, additional contusions came to light on her wrists and ankles. Notably, the coroner's analysis revealed an absence of any traces of drugs or indications of food poisoning within her system. Compelled to confront the undeniable truth that Kim's passing was a result of homicide, law enforcement authorities launched a full-fledged murder inquiry. An assessment of the condition of her body led the police to surmise that her demise likely transpired shortly after her initial disappearance, with the maximum potential time frame between her vanishing and her murder estimated at 10 minutes. Similar to the preliminary inquiry conducted during her disappearance, the absence of witnesses remained puzzling, as it appeared unlikely that her abduction from the residential vicinity where she was last sighted would have gone unnoticed. Suggesting the possibility of a targeted crime, the police commenced an examination into the circles of friends, relatives, and acquaintances associated with Kim's parents. However, this line of investigation yielded no viable outcomes. Expanding their focus, the authorities broadened the roster of potential suspects to encompass all registered offenders in the vicinity who had been released. Despite this, each individual under scrutiny provided alibis that precluded their involvement in the incident. Two days later, on August 23rd, a call originated from Daegyo and reached the police. The voice on the other end belonged unmistakably to the perpetrator, a figure seemingly relishing in the act of taunting and playing mind games with the authorities. However, this malefactor appeared to overestimate the capabilities of these tasked with tracking him down. He readily admitted to Kim's murder, yet his words carried a chilling twist.
I killed a girl between Daeyang Technical High School and Daeyang Middle School.
Strangely, despite this detailed revelation and in the absence of any reported incidents involving bodies in the specified location, The police promptly disregarded the call as a mere prank. Unfortunately, they chose not to pursue an inquiry to verify the truth of his statement. Barely 20 minutes later, the same individual phoned again, the tone of his voice radiating intense displeasure. Evidently perturbed, he forcefully demanded the police to
do a good job with your investigation. Maybe then you can actually catch me.
Despite this impassioned plea, the police held their ground, dismissing the caller's statements as a hoax. When pressed about the meaning of his cryptic message, their skepticism further exacerbated his anger. His agitation escalated into a torrent of furious shouts, punctuated by his emphatic repetition of
7698, 7698, 7698.
Abruptly, he slammed down the receiver, unceremoniously ending the call. Shortly after the conclusion of this call, the police attempted to contact the number 7698, yet the call was abruptly terminated by the recipient. Subsequently, the police unraveled the truth behind the caller's statement. It came to light that 9-year-old Lee Jung-suk, a resident near Daejeon Park, was indeed a key part of this narrative, although she had not fallen victim to murder. On August 18th, as she journeyed home after her piano lessons, Lee was ensnared by an unidentified man who forcibly transported her to Daejeon Park, detaining her for a harrowing span of 4 hours. During her captivity, Lee was initially allowed to occupy herself around a pond area by her abductor, who coerced her into addressing him as master. However, this delinquent subsequently altered his demand, compelling Lee to refer to him as father. Following the passage of those tense hours, he proceeded to immobilize her, launching a strangulation attempt aimed at ending her life. The grip of his hands around her throat persisted until she succumbed to unconsciousness, at which point he fled the scene. Remarkably, Lee's fate took a positive turn when a passerby engaged in hiking stumbled upon her presence, prompting a timely call for medical assistance. Swiftly, an ambulance arrived, conveying her to a hospital where she ultimately recuperated fully. Intriguingly, the number 7698 was traced back to Lee's home, revealing a previously hidden connection. Her case had not garnered media attention, nor was the attempted murder officially reported to law enforcement. Lee's parents harbored concerns over her safety, fearing potential retaliation from the assailant if his failed attempt on her life became known. Additionally, the prospect of their daughter enduring bullying and harassment at the hands of peers prompted their decision to maintain silence. Unbeknownst to the assailant, Lee had managed to survive the ordeal. As it transpired, Lee's experience preceded Kim's tragic demise, making her the first victim in this series of events. Do you remember the note left on Kim's body that I mentioned earlier? This was what it was referring to. It was the same person, and they thought that they had successfully killed Lee. The note read, Lee Jung-suk from Hyeon-Jeong
was killed in Daejeon Park.
On August 24th, the father of 5-year-old Bae Jun-il, under the impression that his son was already asleep, ventured to a nearby convenience store in the company of his friends around 8 p.m. Similarly, Bae's mother, thinking her child had retired for the night after dinner, also left the premises. Returning at 9 p.m., both parents were met with an unsettling absence. Bae was nowhere to be found. Accounts from a neighbor and one of his father's colleagues shed light on Bai's activities earlier that evening. At approximately 7 p.m., Bai ventured outdoors and played in front of the house. Inquisitive, the neighbor questioned his activities, to which Bai responded that he was simply enjoying playtime. In a seemingly innocuous gesture, the neighbor gifted him 21 and encouraged him to keep this transaction a secret from his parents, allowing him to purchase bubblegum or candy from a nearby convenience store before promptly returning home. The proximity of the store was such that it remained easily visible from their residence. It was a practice that the neighbor had previously engaged in, considered ordinary and unremarkable at the time. Bae's return from the convenience store remained elusive, unbeknownst to his parents, who were under the impression he was asleep. They departed from home around 8 p.m. Little did they know that he had already been missing for an hour. The morning of August 25th at 6 a.m., a discovery was witnessed by a fish market dock worker named Mr. Park, stationed in southwest Busan. Engaged in his customary morning tasks, he encountered a grim sight within one of the fish crates, a human hand protruding from its confines. Upon investigating further, he uncovered the lifeless body of a child, unclothed and bound at the hands and feet with his own garments. A stomach-churning note inscribed with the words, "Ha ha ha, I killed him," was present on the child's abdomen. Strikingly, Bae's remains were found at a distance of 7 kilometers from his residence. Upon the arrival of the police, the cause of Bae's demise was identified as strangulation, mirroring the circumstances surrounding Kim's demise and the assault on Lee's life. An analysis of the handwriting featured on the messages found on Kim and Bae's bodies substantiated a shared origin, confirming they were inscribed by the same individual. Furthermore, it was deduced that the message had likely been written using the killer's right hand. The case reached its statute of limitations on August 25, 1990, resulting in its classification as an unsolved mystery. In July 2015, the National Assembly abolished a 25-year limit on first-degree murder. It had previously been extended from 15 to 25 years in December 2007. However, despite the passage of nearly 3 decades between 2018 and 2019, law enforcement made the decision to create an updated and aged representation of the suspect, resulting in a new composite sketch. In a similar vein to the initial endeavor, this revised attempt failed to elicit any individuals coming forward to identify or recognize the depicted person. So what do you think? Should we put on our tinfoil hats and suggest the police were somehow in on this? From an outside perspective, and with hindsight being 2020, it is hard to understand how the South Korean police managed to do such an awful job. But in reality, I think that might have been what happened. It truly seems like, from all I've read, that they were almost handed the case on a silver platter. But maybe there's more to it than's being told to us. Like all cases I cover, I'll update the pinned comment if there's been any updates on the case. Thank you for watching. I am currently treating this as my full-time job, and subscribing really helps me more than I can express. New video out next week. But until next time, keep fearing the living.
On the sidewalk, on the city, on the streets just